Introducing Anil Vijayan, partner, Everest Group. Anil leads Everest Group's service optimization technologies and human resource outsourcing research lines. He advises senior stakeholders on digital transformation and disruptive technologies. Please welcome Anil to present on the topic, Unveiling the Evolution of Global Payroll Across Generations, the Past, Present, and Future.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here speaking with all of you. As mentioned, my name is Anil Vijayan. I'm a partner at Everest Group, where I'm responsible for all research that we do in the HR and talent area, including benefits, payroll, multi-process HR, and HR technology. Payroll, of course, is a key component of that spectrum, and that is what I'll be deep diving into today. If you do have any questions during the course of this presentation, do feel free to drop it into the Q&A box and I'll answer as we go along. So for today's discussion, we'll look at how we got to where we are today with payroll, what stages we have come through, and what stage we are at right now in the world of payroll. We'll then double click into what payroll can be in the near future, including what we believe should be its design principles, the role that technology plays, and finally, what it will end up looking like in the future. With that, let's start by taking a walk down the memory lane and examine the various generations of payroll, in particular, payroll outsourcing that we have come through. Now, in the beginning of payroll outsourcing or payroll 1.0, the focus was very transactional. This was essentially about fulfilling just the core payroll processes to get people paid on time. Now, often it was done using very rudimentary tools such as spreadsheets, and largely the focus was on compliance, cost, and control. That is, people needed to be paid on time, accurately, and with minimal expenditure. So, from a outsourcing perspective, I guess you could say that this is more of a lift and shift kind of scenario, or a your mess for less kind of scenario, where the play was largely around labor arbitrage, not necessarily around any value-added services. Subsequently, we moved to the next generation of payroll, where we had those three C's, that is cost, control, and compliance, more or less sorted out, at least for single country kind of scenarios, and then started seeking greater benefits such as process efficiency. Now, in many ways, this was the age of Six Sigmas and lean and process improvements as well. So, no coincidence that process efficiency was a key focus. Payroll practitioners also started to realize that they're sitting on data that can really serve well as input to overall company strategies and decision making. So you had dashboards and reports also taking shape along with the basic payroll systems. All of this, of course, was aided by technology coming into play. Where we stand today is 3.0. We have a new wave of efficiency and automation making its presence felt. Uh, Now, insights that we need can be real time or at least near real time, and therefore more potent when it comes to decision making. You have the robotic process automation and artificial intelligence based tools helping automate certain payroll tasks and reducing runtime. Additionally, you have elements of employee experience and wellness showing up more as well. So even the scope of what is outsourced tends to be more comprehensive, with not just payroll processes being outsourced, but the expectation from the buyer has increased, and they expect to have value-added services, and that has really pushed the boundary further in terms of what service providers bring to payroll solutioning. So while all of these have been cast from an outsourcing perspective, regardless of whether it's in-house or outsourced, These are the stages that we have gone through, and as it stands today, there is a real opportunity to further transform the construct of payroll and payroll outsourcing into what we call payroll 4.0 or next generation payroll. So for enabling 4.0, we have all the tools and technologies today, but what is really lacking is a holistic approach to the design. And this is what I'll spend considerable time on in the next few slides. Before we get there, let's take a look at what we are really trying to achieve here through 4.0. Now, we all know that the workforce of the future is going to be a mix of folks that have different worldviews and perspectives. So we will have, for instance, we'll have contingent workers as well as permanent ones. We will obviously have a multi-generational workforce. We'll have folks that work remotely as well as those that work in an office environment. Now, next generation payroll should be able to cater to all of these categories. I think that goes without saying, but it's important to call out that it should work seamlessly and consistently, regardless of whether someone is part of the contingent workforce or permanent workforce, working from home, office setting. Regardless of those scenarios, there needs to be some consistency. Now, today, if you go to a technologist and share the problem statement of payroll and payroll processing, likely they are going to say that it should be more than 90% automated. Of course, that's not the case today, even though we have all the tools and techniques for it. So, automated payroll is definitely a goal for next generation payroll, and tied to that, automated payroll can often enable things like on-demand pay by reducing the payroll runtime and superior employee experience as well. So one example of that is consider having, let's say, a virtual agent capability which can run 24/7 for answering all payroll queries, right? So just having that access to an automated response system 24/7 can significantly bump up employee experience just by having that channel open. And then finally, we also have the capability to use the incredible treasure trove of data that goes through HR every day to better organizations, to move business forward, to better our recruitment processes, and so on. What is missing on this front is a holistic approach to data and data management. And again, next generation payroll seeks to achieve this as an outcome. Now, this is not just a theoretical concept. We can actually move very close to the aspirational 4.0 or next generation even today, as long as we apply certain design principles. And these are illustrated through what we are calling the SMART approach. The first element or first key element of this is experience. Traditionally, payroll has been designed to serve organizational functions such as tax, finance, and compliance. And this will no longer do in today's world where your employee base is really the most critical asset. Now, payroll needs to work around the needs of the employees and cater to employee moments that matter. So, in designing payroll itself, we need to rethink processes from an employee-centric perspective. Uh, for example, if I as an employee need to raise a certain inaccuracy with my payslip, I should not have to jump through hoops or run from pillar to post from the HR department and then to the finance department, to the tax department, and so on. Rather, I should be able to, let's say, pick up the phone or use a chat window. And through a single pane experience, I need to be able to get my answer, while silo hopping, if it still exists, should happen in the background. Right. So this is also enabled by how we use and manage data. Now, tightly coupled systems with seamless data flow can not only enhance employee experience through easier access to data, but can also be exponentially more useful than siloed data sets in providing all kinds of insights, right from the more mundane reporting based ones to predictive ones such as future annual attrition or absence in the next quarter, and so on. Then we have all the tools to do this, from iPaaS solutions to APIs to RPA for legacy systems. So integration at a much deeper level with better data flow can be achieved, but only if we set out to design for it. Now, this is not a problem which is unique to payroll. In fact, most organizations, or at least most forward-thinking organizations, are considering how they can actually manage the data that they have within their organizations and how they can use it to derive better insights. Right. So, even at an enterprise or an organizational level, you have several organizations rethinking their whole data strategy holistically. Uh, all right, next you have the amalgamation of process and technology. One part of this is about codifying expertise into technology. Now, often we end up thinking of these as distinct, the expertise mostly handled by humans, and the technology providing the leg up in automation. But the true way for expertise to scale and find its way to multiple people is through embedding it within the technology that everyone uses. And this can take various shapes, such as building and updating various country workflows, not just for payroll but also for compliance. It can be through provisioning of suitable benchmarks and so on. Then we have the delivery model for payroll services. Now, keeping in line with the developments we are seeing today, there is an extra lever which can be utilized in the hub and spoke model, and that is the edge. The edge is where you can use work from home, often to access talent that you may not have been able to otherwise. But it also helps build resilience in case of disruptions, such as those that have been caused by the pandemic that we are all currently living through. And finally, talent itself will need to change. Now, once you can have automation deal with a large portion of payroll, what you'll then need is a very different talent portfolio. Likely, you'll need a group that can provide very deep expertise in payroll. These may be specific to particular countries and may be co-located for that need. But you'll also need another group that can help create and maintain the digital components of payroll, whether this be around analytics or automation or something else, right? So the talent mix will end up being radically different from what you see in payroll services today. Again, to sum up, to create the conditions for next generation payroll, you need to look at payroll through different lenses and customize for your context. Experience, data, technology, delivery locations, and delivery constructs, and the talent model. All of these are the critical pieces that need to come together in building to this outcome. Okay, so we haven't really spoken explicitly about the types of next generation technologies, but they are cross cutting in each of the design themes that I touched upon, and they play a central role in achieving the next generation construct. Right? So we'll double click on some of these in this section. As you can see, the relatively mature technologies are already being leveraged heavily in payroll today. But what is really going to get us to 4.0 is those on the bottom right. The, the next generation of automation technologies and enablers include robotic process automation or surface automation. There will be certain ancillary tools as well, such as process mining. You have AI-based solutions, including advanced analytics, which does tend to use AI as well, and so on. We also have a few technologies such as blockchain, which show some promise, but they are relatively untested in the payroll context. If you look at some of these in detail, their role becomes more and more evident. Cloud-based integrated platforms can often help achieve multiple goals at once. So, for instance, it can certainly ensure consistent experience between various HR systems. But apart from that, the data pipeline for analytics also can be considerably shortened using cloud technologies. Advanced analytics, now again, we have the tools for these, and these can be incredibly powerful. We are seeing increasingly the use of AI in analytics for spotting trends, making predictions, and in some cases, even offering next best action or resolutions for problems identified. Under automation, RPA is being used today to streamline data transfer, especially where legacy systems are involved and therefore API based data transfer is harder. It can also be used for various validations in pre and post payroll run processes. There are, AI-based solutions being used, such as virtual agents I mentioned before. You also have tools such as intelligent document processing, which is used for ingestion of documents, and AI-based anomaly detection is also being applied across the value chain of payroll. The utility of some of these technologies and the use cases for these also continue to expand. So as we get to a more future ready automated payroll, some of these things will also come into play more and more. Okay, so let's look at what the next generation payroll will look like. What will its defining characteristics be? Now, if you look at it purely from a payroll solution outcome or characteristic perspective, certain elements will be expected by default. So experience, and we spoke about this earlier, it has to be both superior and very importantly, consistent for various groups of employees, regardless of geography, work setting, and so on. Resilience is also an important aspect. I spoke about the edge model, and parts of automation and cloud also will really help build something that can withstand and operate even during adverse events. You definitely want these solutions to be scalable, meaning it should work for both small and large employee sizes. This is where things like embedding expertise into technology I spoke about earlier also comes into play. And then finally, in terms of outcomes, you want payroll not only to be extremely efficient, but also play a larger role by contributing actionable insights that can feed into key business or strategic business decisions as well. That was about payroll, but the next generation of payroll will not exist in a silo. Rather, the expectation will be that value added solutions would come bundled in many ways. The unleashing of data, reduction in pay runtime through automation and other digital tools will facilitate some of these. For instance, on-demand pay will become more commonplace. Employees will and should have access to the compensation for the days that they worked for, regardless of whether it's the second week of the month or the last. And this will be facilitated by the reduction in runtime through automation. Similarly, financial coaching, budgeting, and other tools can be easily linked to payroll data to enable employees to manage their financial health in a better fashion. We'll definitely have more self-help solutions with some next-generation technologies such as conversational AI adding to that toolkit of self-help options. Net, payroll will not be limited to just the payroll processes, but would rather expand into an ecosystem of tools or apps around it that can simply help employees do a lot more. Right. So as I've come to the end of this presentation, I just want to reiterate that the next generation payroll concept is not simply a concept or an academic exercise. Today we do have all the tools and technologies to make it happen. What really is needed is the motivation and the conviction from both enterprises and vendors that this is the right direction to move into, and then deliberate action to design for that. So those that do that will definitely generate a competitive advantage for themselves. So if you're not thinking in this direction yet, I would definitely urge you to start now. Of course, if there are any questions that I have not been able to cover, please reach out to me. My contact details are on screen. Thank you.
Beyond.